Peter Obi has spent the last 2 years telling Nigerians that this government is lawless. He's been on X, quoting KPMG reports, citing the Constitution, calling out rigged systems, and positioning himself as the man with clean hands in a dirty game. So here's the question nobody in Nigerian mainstream media is asking loud enough. What happens when the same system he's been criticizing turns around and uses the law, a law passed in broad daylight, to potentially lock him up, disqualify him from the 2027 race, or strip him of his party membership entirely? Because on the 11th of March 2026, Nigeria's House of Representatives quietly passed an amendment that could do exactly that. And the scariest part? Peter Obi himself complained about it, but may not have fully reckoned with what it means for him personally. Stay with me, because by the time we get to section 4 of this video, you'll see why this law may have been designed with a very specific list of names in mind, and Obi's name might be near the top. Before we go deeper, if you're just finding Naija Newsfeed, welcome. This channel exists for one reason: to break down what's really happening in Nigerian politics without the tribalism, without the noise, without the spin. I need you to do one thing for me right now. Hit that subscribe button. Not because YouTube told you to, because this channel only grows if you help it grow. Every subscriber is a direct vote that says, I want more of this. I want the analysis. I want the truth. I put serious time and research into every single video I bring you. And the only way I can keep doing this, keep going deeper, keep hiring researchers, keep staying independent, is if you subscribe and share this channel with people who deserve to know what's really going on. So hit subscribe now. Then let's get into it, because this gets very interesting very fast. Let's build the foundation. On March 11th, 2026, Nigeria's House of Representatives amended the Electoral Act 2026, a law that President Bola Tinubu had signed just weeks earlier, to introduce criminal penalties for a very specific political behavior: dual party membership. Under the new amendment to Section 77 of the Electoral Act 2026, any Nigerian who is found to be registered in more than one political party at the same time commits a criminal offense. The punishment? A fine of 10 million naira, a prison sentence of up to 2 years, or both. The amendment passed during plenary after lawmakers considered it at the Committee of the Whole. It went through first reading, second reading, committee stage, and third reading, all in a single legislative session. That speed should tell you something. Now, why is this coming up now, just over a year before the 2027 presidential election? Here's the context. In December 2025, Peter Obi formally defected from the Labour Party to the African Democratic Congress, the ADC, at a ceremony in Enugu. He joined alongside senators, House of Representatives members, and a wave of Southeast politicians. But here's the complication. Obi's name was still on the Labour Party's internal records. Some party registers are submitted to INEC. The law requires that only individuals whose names appear on submitted registers are eligible to contest elections. And the new amendment doesn't just look forward, it looks at who is currently registered in more than one party. So the question becomes, is Peter Obi's name still sitting in a Labour Party register? And if it is, under this new law, what happens next? I'll come back to that question in the Strategic Outlook section, because the answer has direct implications for the 2027 race. Don't let me forget. Now let's understand the legal framework, because without this, you can't really see what's happening. The Electoral Act 2026 is the governing law for how Nigerian elections are conducted, how parties are structured, and how candidates qualify. President Tinubu signed it into law in early 2026. The fresh amendment to Section 77 adds 3 new subsections. Let me break them down plainly. Subsection 1. A person shall not be registered as a member of more than one political party at the same time. Subsection 2. Where dual membership is established, all such registrations are void. The person ceases to be recognized as a valid member of any party until they regularize their membership. Subsection 3. A person who knowingly registers or maintains membership in more than one party commits an offense and is liable to a 10 million naira fine, 2 years in prison, or both. Now, the word knowingly is important. It means the prosecution must prove intent. You can't be jailed simply because your name appeared in 2 registers by accident. But that's where INEC's rule becomes critical. INEC, the Independent Nigerian Electoral Commission, already receives party membership registers before.
This is the part of the video that Niger Newsfeed exists for. Because the law is just the surface. The real story is underneath. Who benefits from this amendment? Let's start with the obvious, the ruling APC and the Tinubu administration. The ADC, Peter Obi's new party, has been growing rapidly. Since Obi's defection in December 2025, it has absorbed senators, house members, governors' allies, and the entire infrastructure of the obedient movement. The coalition also includes Atiku Abubakar, Rotimi Amechi, former governors El-Rufai, Tambuwal, and Suswam, essentially the entire non-APC political establishment. That is a serious threat to the APC's dominance in 2027. Now think about this. If you are in power, what's the cleanest way to neutralize a political threat before it becomes too big to beat at the ballot box? You use the institution. You use the law. The dual membership amendment creates a legal sword that can be pointed at almost anyone who defected in the last 12 months. And in Nigerian politics, defection is the dominant political activity right now. Senators defecting to ADC, lawmakers defecting to APC, everyone is moving, which means almost everyone has potential dual registration exposure. But why is Peter Obi specifically vulnerable? Here's the thing. Obi formally joined ADC at a ceremony in Enugu in late December 2025. But party registers are not always updated in real time. The Labour Party, particularly the Abure-led faction, has strong institutional incentives to keep Obi's name in their records. Why? Because his presence on their books gives them legitimacy. His exit from their narrative is something they want to delay. If Obi's name appears in both the Labour Party register and the ADC register when INEC collects membership lists for the 2027 primaries, and someone chooses to formally report that to INEC or to law enforcement, the amendment gives the state the legal tools to act. Is that scenario certain? No. Is it possible? Absolutely. And that's what makes this dangerous. Who are the silent players here? Look at who is not making noise about this amendment. The National Assembly, which is APC-dominated, passed it in a single sitting. Deputy Speaker Benjamin Kalu presided. The speed and the silence tell you this was coordinated. It did not emerge from a genuine reform conversation. Also notice, the amendment comes barely a month after Tinubu signed the main Electoral Act 2026. Amendments this fast don't happen by accident in Abuja. Someone had a draft ready. What are the electoral implications? 2 things matter for 2027. First, under the new law, parties must submit their membership registers to INEC by April 2nd for eligibility purposes. Anyone whose name appears on multiple registers after that deadline is technically in violation. That April 2nd date is not random. It's a political deadline embedded in a legal framework. And if the dual membership charge is ever brought against Obi, even unsuccessfully, it creates a legal cloud that could distract his campaign, drain his resources, and give the APC's media machinery months of content to undermine his credibility. Even an acquittal comes too late once the narrative is set. Here's the reframe that changes everything. This is not really a law about dual membership. This is a law about who gets to run in 2027. The dual membership clause is the weapon. The opposition coalition is the target. The timeline of moves. July 2025, ADC adopted as platform for National Opposition Coalition. December 2025, Obi formally defects to ADC in Enugu. January 2026, multiple senators and lawmakers defect to ADC.
February 2026, Tinubu signs the main Electoral Act 2026 into law. March 11, 2026, House of Representatives amends the act to criminalize dual membership in a single day. March 13, 2026, Peter Obi publicly criticizes the amendment, naming its contradictions, but does he fully grasp he may be caught in its net? April 2026, INEC register submission deadline approaches. That is a very tight, very deliberate sequence of legislative events. Now, let's zoom out. What does this mean for Nigeria? For the balance of power, this amendment, if enforced selectively, gives the ruling party a tool to thin out the opposition ahead of 2027, without touching the ballot box. That's the real danger. Democracies don't die by coup anymore. They die by 1,000 legal cuts, each one technically valid on its own. For ordinary Nigerians, many Nigerians who participated in the 2023 obedience movement registered with multiple parties to hedge their bets, or were registered by party agents without their knowledge. If the law is enforced broadly, thousands of ordinary citizens could theoretically face legal exposure. The knowingly clause is a protection, but in a system where prosecution can be politically motivated, that protection is only as strong as the judiciary's independence. For the economy, political instability and legal uncertainty about who will or won't be able to run in 2027 chills investor confidence. Foreign investors watch electoral processes, a perception that Nigeria is criminalizing opposition activity rather than reforming it. That perception carries costs. For inter-ethnic and inter-regional relations, Peter Obi is the dominant political figure of the Southeast right now. Any legal action against him, even a threat, will be read through an ethnic lens by millions of Igbo Nigerians. That's not a statement of support or opposition, that's just the political reality. And any government that triggers that kind of regional grievance 18 months before a presidential election is playing with fire. For security, a highly contested, legally chaotic 2027 electoral cycle, especially one where major opposition figures feel the courts and the law are weaponized against them, creates conditions where political tension spills into social tension. We've seen what that looks like in Nigeria. Nobody wants to go back there. But here's what very few analysts are talking about: the international dimension. Because this isn't just a domestic story. This section matters, and here's why. The ADC and the broader opposition coalition has already drawn attention from the diaspora, from Washington, and from European observers who have been watching Nigeria's democratic trajectory closely since the contested 2023 election. When the 2023 election results were announced, international observers from the European Union, the United States, and the African Union all raised concerns about transparency. The controversy never fully went away, it just got buried under economic headlines about subsidy removal and naira devaluation. Now, any new law that appears to target opposition figures ahead of 2027 will be placed in that context by foreign governments and election monitoring bodies. The US State Department, the EU Election Mission, and Commonwealth observers will all be watching how this amendment is enforced. For Nigerians in the diaspora, you need to understand that what happens with this law in the next 6 months will send a signal to the international community about whether Nigeria's 2027 election will be a real contest or a managed outcome. If you are sending remittances home, building businesses, or planning to return, your stakes in this are real. The global pattern. What Nigeria is doing is not unique. In Hungary, Poland, and several African nations, we've seen ruling parties use electoral law amendments to lock out credible opposition. The mechanism is always the same. Use legitimate legal tools, apply them selectively, and by the time courts rule, the election is over. Nigeria needs to watch that pattern very carefully. Now, if what I just laid out surprises you, drop a comment below. I want to know your take before we get to the part that changes the whole picture. And while you're down there, listen. This channel doesn't have a big media company behind it. No corporate sponsor, no political backer. Just me, research, and people like you who believe Nigerians deserve clear political analysis. The only way I can keep doing this work, getting better microphones, better research, more consistent uploads, deeper investigations, is if you subscribe. That's it. That's the whole business model. Your subscription is not just a click. It is the reason this channel can exist. If you've been watching without subscribing, do it now. It costs you nothing. It means everything to this channel. And share this video with one Nigerian who is still confused about what's happening in 2026 politics, because they need to see this.
Let me push back on my own analysis, because that's how we keep this honest. Misconception 1. This law is definitely targeted at Peter Obi. We don't know that for certain. What we know is that the effect of the law could be to expose him and others like him. But we should not assert that the intent is exclusively anti-Obi without direct evidence. The law on its face applies to everyone. Several APC members also hold dual registrations, and if the law is enforced impartially, they'd be caught too. The question is whether it will be enforced impartially. History gives us reason for skepticism, but skepticism is not the same as proof. Misconception 2. Peter Obi is definitely going to be arrested. This is speculative and irresponsible. There is no indication as of now that the state is preparing a prosecution against Obi. What exists is a legal framework that makes such a move possible. Possible and certain are very different things. Misconception 3. Peter Obi has clean hands in all of this. Not entirely. Obi himself has been a serial defector, from APGA to PDP to Labour Party to ADC. He has benefited from Nigeria's fluid political system when it suited him. His criticism of political nomadism is valid on the merits, but his own political history is not without contradictions. The man criticizing political nomadism has been a political nomad. That doesn't make his argument wrong, but it does add a layer of complexity. The strongest argument from the other side. The APC and supporters of the amendment will say party discipline is necessary. You cannot have people with a foot in two camps. This is about integrity. And honestly, that argument is not baseless. Nigeria's electoral chaos has partly been driven by politicians who hold multiple memberships to play multiple angles. Cleaning that up is a legitimate goal. Where that argument falls apart. The problem is the simultaneity. The same lawmakers who want to imprison you for dual party membership have removed certificate forgery as grounds for an election tribunal challenge. If your goal is truly integrity, you clean all of it up, not just the part that hurts your opponents. The selective application of integrity itself is a form of corruption. Let me now answer the question I raised in section 2. Is Peter Obi's name still in a Labour Party register? And if so, what happens? Here's what we know. Obi formally joined ADC in December 2025. He publicly reaffirmed his ADC membership in Anambra State as recently as March 8, 2026, 3 days before the amendment passed. The Labour Party has not formally claimed him as a current member, but here is where it gets complicated. Party membership registers in Nigeria are notoriously difficult to clean up quickly. Unless Obi's legal team has formally ensured his removal from every LP register held by every state chapter and submitted to INEC, there remains a window of exposure. Most likely next moves from key players. 1. The APC will not immediately prosecute. That would be too obvious. Instead, watch for opposition figures, possibly fake civil society voices, to file complaints with INEC about dual registrations. That triggers an administrative process, not a criminal one, which is harder to challenge legally and creates a delay mechanism. 2. Peter Obi's team will likely move to produce legal documentation proving clean severance from LP and sole ADC membership. Expect press statements and potentially affidavits. They know the trap. 3. The ADC will push back legally and politically. They've already rejected parts of the Electoral Act 2026, particularly sections on resort transmission and primaries. A legal challenge to the dual membership amendment is possible, possibly on Section 40 grounds. 4. INEC will be in the hot seat. As a supposedly independent body, how they handle membership register discrepancies will tell you everything about whether the 2027 election can be trusted. Here's my read. The dual membership amendment may never be used directly against Obi. It doesn't need to be. Its real power is as a deterrent and as a bargaining chip. It tells the ADC coalition, we have this tool, don't push too hard or we'll use it. That kind of silent threat reshapes how boldly the opposition campaigns, and that may be the whole point. Watch for these signals. Any INEC statement about dual membership complaints, any court challenge filed by ADC against the amendment, whether Tinubu formally signs the amendment into law, it still needs presidential assent. Any arrest or invitation of opposition figures related to party membership. Best case scenario. The amendment is challenged in court, ruled unconstitutional on Section 40 grounds, and struck down, clearing the field for a genuinely competitive 2027 election. Worst case scenario. The amendment is selectively enforced to disqualify or destabilize opposition candidates, creating a 2027 election that is legally contested before a single vote is cast. And here is the second open loop I want to close. Early in this video, I said the law may have been designed with specific names in mind. After walking through the timeline, July 2025 coalition formation, December 2025 defection, February 2026 law signing, March 2026 amendment, it becomes very difficult to argue that this is a coincidence. The sequence is too tight, the specificity is too precise. Whether or not you can prove intent in a courtroom, the political logic is clear. So, let's bring this home. The question I raised at the start was this: can a law passed in broad daylight be used to put Peter Obi behind bars or at minimum out of the 2027 race? Here is the measured, honest answer. Yes, technically, but it's not the most likely outcome, and it doesn't have to happen for the law to do its damage. The real damage is already done. The law exists, the threat is real. The ADC coalition now operates in a legal environment where any member who has been politically active in the last 2 years has some level of dual registration exposure. That creates fear, that creates hesitation, that creates exactly the kind of internal fracture that powerful incumbents want to see in their opponents. Peter Obi's response to this law on March 13th was to criticize it from ethical grounds. He was right, but his critics will say he was 3 years too late in worrying about the integrity of the laws governing him. What Nigerians need to watch is not just Obi, it's the system, because the pattern being established in 2026 will define what kind of election 2027 becomes. What do you think? Is this a legitimate electoral reform or is it a legal trap? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone. If this breakdown gave you clarity on what is really going on, do me a favor and share it with one person who needs to understand this. Just one. That's how this channel reaches people who deserve better analysis. And here's what I need you to understand. Subscribing to Nigeria Newsfeed is the only way you can directly help me do better work. Not a donation, not a super chat, just a subscription. That number,